Welcome to Yeukai Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host.
Hi everyone and welcome to the show. It's Trevor Stockwell here with you today, and I'm joined by our guest Dwight. Now, Dwight's a financial expert. He's a coach and a podcast host, and he's recently released a book as well, which he's going to tell us about. Dwight's been helping people for over 18 years to get their lives straight by managing both their finances, but also their mindsets, how they approach life. He helps them live their lives on purpose, and he's going to unpack more of what that means shortly. So welcome, Dwight Heck.
Thank you, Trevor. I appreciate the intro.
Great to have you here, actually. You've got a very interesting story, which will be really good to learn more of. Maybe kick off a little bit before the finance days. There was struggle, wasn't there? There was lots of struggle.
I'll spend a couple seconds just telling you how I got into the circumstance of getting where I was at. As an entrepreneur, my first entrepreneurial journey, and people will kind of chuckle at this, was being a paper boy, was actually delivering the newspapers as a young kid. It taught me the fact of rejection. It taught me the fact of how to handle money, how to write, bank checks and be able to, had to pay for things. I had to budget my money to make sure that I was paying for the papers, and seeing how people take advantage of young kids. I'd have people peeking through the curtains, not answering the door when they owed me money. Yet I was such a kind kid. I was raised in a very Christian home, be very kind to people, give them another shot. And I'd keep on delivering the papers. And sometimes people would owe me for 2-3 months. So it was a wake-up call. I didn't realize the lessons I learned at 12, 13 years of age, and how it went into my being an entrepreneur as I got older. And when I got older, I was very good. I went through electronics engineering at one of the local technical colleges here, and graduated and got involved in technical. And I was working at a company, and the company, I was such a person that wanted to be loved, that wanted to be connected with people, that I overheard a bunch of the bosses talking about how they couldn't get their systems working properly. And I did computers on the side. I had been for years repairing and working on stuff. And I was just a tenacious type of person. If I wanted to learn something, nobody was going to tell me I couldn't do it. So I said, well, you can't get rid of your company to come in and do what you need to get done. Why don't you give me a shot? And they said, they looked at me kind of confused. Well, you work in the lab, because I worked in the lab at a company called Canadian Standards Association. They're an international company that does certifications and testing. And they said, okay, we'll give you a shot. And they handed me these big books. They were like 7-8 inches thick. and I literally, over the next 2 days, spent my time working during the day and at night. And I was married, kids. And I read these books, figured out how to do it, spent the next few nights after hours till 2:00 in the morning, figured out all their problems, got it all up and working before the other company that was hired to do their work even got in there. I had done it. So they gave me all their IT work. So I worked in the day as an electronic technician, working as an engineer, doing testing and during the day, and at night doing all their computer stuff, because they had a big building, like they had a lot of staff. Got to a point where I ended up having to quit because I was getting offered other contracts by their companies. So on my weekends and evenings, I wasn't helping them. I was working for other people. I ended up quitting, buying a computer company, buying a service company and a consulting firm, brought on a partner, a friend of my brother-in-law, actually, a good friend of mine. And we proceeded to do consulting and running a retail computer store and doing all that stuff. But eventually come around 2001, right when 9/11 happened, I had a health issue. I had something called Bell's palsy. Some people are familiar with it. Some people aren't. It's actual a paralysis of your face and your neck and your body, and you can have varying degrees of it. And I had it so bad that the side of my face was completely paralyzed. The right side of my face, and I couldn't. You lose all. You can't keep your eye closed. You had to have special medications. I was seeing neurologists. And they said that the reason that it happened was because of my stress. My stress was so high. I was working 18, 20-hour days with my firm, trying to please everybody and not pleasing me, that my health failed. And a virus attacked what they call your number 7 nerve. And I got paralysis. And I couldn't drive for just about 3 months because of it. And they told me, you know what? You can't continue on this way, because it'll go from being that to a full-blown stroke, a heart attack, or whatever. You're taking things too close to the chest, right? And that's my personality. I'm also an empath by nature. I've found that out over the last decade through help, right? People helping me understand exactly what an empath is, and realizing that I attract people that are in pain, and I take on their energy. Their negative energy or hurting energy, I give them back positive, but I'm left with the negative. And it was just breaking me down, because I did it in not just personal life, in my consulting business, in my computer industry. So in 2002, I was struggling to leave the industry, because right then and there, I still had to continue to work it. Even though my paralysis had disappeared, I was able to work again. I have 5 kids, single dad. I needed to be able to support them. So I basically was living in quiet desperation, unable to sleep. And a friend of mine reached out to me and said, you know what? I've known you for a long time. Like at that point in time, I think we had known each other for already 12 years, 13 years. And he says, you're amazing at dealing with people and relationship building. And he didn't realize about the health issues in the sense of taking on too much. So initially, he talked to me about it and I wasn't sure, but then he called me back a couple weeks later and said, you really need to do this. Well, I got somebody that'll train and coach you. People need somebody like you in their life, and you need it. Because first and foremost, we're going to help you get your financial house in order, because it sucks. I remember him telling me that, because he was a good friend of mine. He says, you make a 6-figure income, yet you're broke all the time. Why is that? I said, I don't know. We're living with more months than money, like a lot of people. We spend more than we should because we don't understand the rules of the money game. Nobody sat us down. It doesn't matter where you live in the world. Our school systems are broken in regards to teaching people about finance.
Yeah.
So I got started, and in the first year, it was a real struggle. I think when I got my first commission check, my first commission statement for the first year. So it was from September 2002 to September 2003. I made like $8,000, and I was used to making that in minimum in a month, and I made that in a whole year. But I realized, and I just about was going to quit and go back to the comfort zone. Haven't we all felt that? Go back to the comfort zone where we feel comfortable. Yeah. And I didn't like who had been training me. So 6 weeks into me starting in the fall of 2002, I fired that person. And I was literally as a trainer, and I went out, and I'm a tenacious person. And I went out and I learned the rules of the money game. I made phone calls to the product companies. I made phone calls to other people that I seen speak at different events. I reached out to them and said, hey, I got questions. Will you help me? Well, people by nature, most people want to help, especially when they feel that you appreciate them. So when you appreciate somebody, they're more willing to give knowledge when you have that relationship. So they started teaching me. And then from the fall of 2003 to March of 2004, so about 5 months, I went from making $8,000 in that prior year to making $140,000. I literally went, like that. Yeah. Right? Because all people don't realize all the steps I put in prior, they'll say, well, you're luck. Yeah, it's not luck. Everything I'd gone through was a culmination of my consulting business and what it taught me about being tenacious and never giving up, to getting involved in having a poor trainer, to understanding that, nobody's going to beat me. I have people that are looking at me, and they're counting on me to figure my life out. My 5 little kids counting on me, right? So that's how I basically evolved into the finance game. And back then, I was at a conference, and they talked about living life on purpose. And I wrote down, I don't know why they didn't say that phrase, but I wrote down live life on purpose. And I put a big exclamation, not by accident exclamation. And I've been living and training on that ever since. because I believe we all live on a hamster wheel, and that someday somebody has to care enough to help us be able to climb off it and realize that there's a long road ahead of us, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Sorry for the long explanation.
No, it's an interesting journey. It really is. Lots of lessons that you learn along the way as well, which you're now kind of using to help others. So maybe just, you mentioned a couple of times there the rules of the money game. So enlighten us. What are the rules of the money game? Just whether people are listening and they're struggling with money or not, we'll know somebody that is, and what's the way that we can help them?
Well, the number one rule of the money game, there's number 1 and 2 work together. And I talk about it on my website. People can actually check it out. Step 1 and 2 are goal setting and budgeting, because people traditionally will take an envelope. Let's say they'll take an envelope, and I'll say to the clients, so some of them are corporate clients, business clients. It's amazing how they don't understand the rules of the money game that are so simple. They'll write down mortgage, rent, utilities, gas for their vehicle, like petrol. They'll write down a few things and they'll turn it to me and say, this is my budget. And I'll say, well, that's a start. And they'll go, what do you mean that's a start? Well, what do you actually, do you ever get a haircut? Do you ever go on vacation? Do you ever go out to a movie? Do you ever go out for a meal? And I list off things, and you look at them and they're like, initially they're smug. And then all of a sudden you see color draining out of them, the realization. And they'll, by the time, and again, what I'm talking about takes a while. I just don't sit down and it happens like that. It's a process. The first meeting alone is just about teaching them about goal setting, and that it's never too late that they can achieve whatever. But so I have goal setting sheets I go through, and I ask them multiple questions like, if something was to happen today and there was a tragedy, would your significant other be okay? Would your kids be okay? And, they'll select things, and then I go through it with them, and I speak to the couples or individual or a business, and I'll actually say to them, life is meant to live life on purpose. So you don't know these basic things. Once you understand these basic things, and I understand where your monetary part of your life comes in, because you're telling me you want a vacation, once a year, twice a year, multiple times a year. Your family lives, like I have clients, a good client of mine, his family all lives in Ireland. He's an immigrant here, and he's missing his family. Well, you have to live life on purpose to know that unless you want to live on a revolving credit, everything's bought in credit cards, lines of credit, loans, living life on purpose. You need to admit to yourself that you want certain things. It's okay to want. Yeah. What it's not okay is not to know how to do it on purpose. So once I have all their goals set up, sometimes I can get into it in the first appointment. Normally it's a second appointment. And then I start doing what I was saying. Do you get haircuts? So we go through a very detailed budget, and it's not very hard. I can send it to anybody that's listening. When they reach out to me, I just had I designed it about 19 years ago, just as I was getting into finance, because I'm in my 19th year now. And it's very simplistic Excel spreadsheet, but it makes them think. And they'll put in, I got it designed so it shows like a pie chart and bar graph. So if you have a month where you're making $1,000, we're going to use a very low number, and you're spending $1,200, it's going to show you. And it's going to be, and it's meant to needle you. It's meant to poke the bear. It's meant to make it so that you feel uncomfortable. And then I'm going to be the person that's going to coach and be your life coach to help you work through that emotional strife, because I've been through it with quiet desperation many nights in my life until I got into finance, because I did. The more we make, the more we spend. Yeah. And it is so true. So I help them get their budget under control, and I'll ask them simple questions. And you can ask anybody this, and you'd be shocked how many people don't know. And you'll say to them, what month of the year do you think you spend the most amount of money? You think it would be obvious that it's December for Christmas for most people. People are like deer caught in headlights. They're just like, I don't know. And you know what? Some of them will say, Trevor, they'll say, we thought we knew the answer, but we were afraid to say it and look stupid. We've got to be a society where we're afraid just to say something and not be judged for what we say. Yeah. So I teach people about that 6 inches between their ears and tell them that it's okay. There's nothing that you could say to me that's going to sound dumb or stupid, because your life is your imprint on the world. My imprint's different. we have overlapping imprints, and I can understand where you're coming from, and I can relate, and I can empathize with you. But the biggest thing I can do for you is help you understand the different steps to go through in the rules of the money game. So the first two most important steps are goal setting, understanding where they want to go, understanding, and unfortunately, it's a mental slap for some people, realizing how terrible their lives are because they've been living in the clouds. They've been living in that go to work, go home mentality, and they've had nobody support them. They've hid everything from their family. Sometimes spouses hide it from one another, how bad their finances are. They don't know how to communicate. I teach spouses, significant others, how to work with one another, to communicate about money. And it's all steps in the rules of the money game. It's okay to be at a certain spot. What it's not okay, though, is that you feel helpless. You don't feel like anybody cares to help uplift you and guide you through the process of getting off that hamster wheel and living a life of, on purpose, not by accident. So we owe it to society to be the best version of ourselves. But how can we be that best version if nobody cares enough to find out really how hurting we are and then gives us hope? So one of the number one things I'll end before I'm going on and on, I apologize. At the end of the first appointment, I do say to clients, I'll look at them and say, you know what, when I got here, you were all tense. I could see that things were very emotional for you. And by the end of it, you're leaning forward and you're like enjoying what we're talking about. And you realize that all the stuff I wrote down here, this is going to take a while. This might take 6 appointments, 5 appointments, might take a few months, depending on how much you emotionally can handle. We're going to go at the speed of your dreams, not the speed of mine. Yeah. Right? So do you feel any better? Simple question. Do you feel any better? And 9 times out of 10, people will go, oh yeah, we feel way better. We know we got a long road, but at least we know we have you to help us through it. Thank you. It is such a rewarding, warm feeling when you can see hope in somebody's face instead of despair and tragedy. Right? Yeah. Because sometimes it is tragedy that has caused it. Right?
Yeah. And it's like you say, knowing that you've got somebody that's going to walk alongside you, that knows how to get you out of it, even if the journey is a while. Like, we can spend years getting into debt and all sorts of financial issues, and then you're a coach, get me out of it in a month. It's like, it's not going to happen, is it? It's just not.
Well, there is people that do it. There's people that do it that way. Because I don't charge for what I do. There's people that do what I do, maybe not as well, maybe better. I don't know, but they charge for it. Yeah. They do fee-based financial planning where it's so specific and rigid, and they'll do it in a 30-day period. But people that I've talked to, and I know people that do that type of service, people are left empty. Yeah. It's not long-term. Yeah. Oh, next time you have something going on, get a hold of me. I get invited to weddings. I've been invited to birthday parties. I want lifetime friends. Yeah. I want them to call me up and say, hey, we had this terrible thing happen. You always said that phrase, I can help you see the forest for the trees, right? Can you help us with our budget? Yeah. Can you figure out where we can take this or how we can restructure stuff so that it doesn't put so much emotional and, stress on us? And that's the type of thing that I resonate with, right? Is making sure that people can literally have hope, that they know that they're not alone. I don't want to be that traditional person. So I chose years ago not to do a fee-based service. If we get to a point where they utilize products or services, insurance, investment, healthcare, whatever, I make a commission. But in order to get to that point, I go through so much with them. I help them. And I'm very straightforward with them. And I'll explain to them if they want to know how exactly I get paid, or they'll ask me stories. I've had people say to me, well, it's nice for you to say all this stuff. You look at you've got all this stuff going on, and look how, you're so successful. I said, yeah, until I wasn't. At one time I wasn't successful. I've been where you're at. Here's life's journey. You're here. I'm here. The only difference is I've gone through more to get to this point because I had people needle and push me. And I was tenacious. I'm going to teach you the same so that you can be tenacious and live your life on purpose and have a passion again for living, instead of having that Monday to Friday, go to work, go home, get paid, and go to bed at night in quiet desperation, wondering if you can put your kids in extracurricular activities. If something was to break down, There's people that lay in bed at night, Trevor, that are worried about things breaking down. You'd be shocked what I've heard in 18 years.
Yeah.
You wake at night because you're afraid your car is going to break down or you're going to lose your job, right? Yeah. It's terrible what our world goes through on a daily basis. And then you add the pandemic on there, it's even been harder on people.
Yeah. And particularly like a lot of the listeners are running at least one business, some multiple businesses as well. So then there's the added dimension if they're entrepreneurial, they're self-employed kind of thing. They have to make it work, don't they? Otherwise, the money doesn't come in at the end of the month or whatever.
I get a lot of businesses that I coach too.
Yeah. I was gonna kind of tap your experiences. What, if there's any, but what would be, from a business owner's perspective, what would be an extra thing they have to focus on, or a pitfall that they want to try and avoid that maybe an employee side of it doesn't have from a financial perspective? Or does it not really make any difference?
So I'm just trying to understand your question. So when I'm coaching businesses, is that what you're saying? Or what exact? Sorry, I'm kind of confused. So if I'm go on.
What would be some of the...
If I'm coaching a business, how do I help the businesses be able to help their employees?
No, how can... What are the challenges that business owners have more financially than people that are just employees?
Oh my goodness. The challenges are absolutely phenomenal for entrepreneurs and self-employed business owners, because think about it this way. For your listeners and maybe yourself, if you've ever read or understand a book called Cash Flow Quadrant by a famous author and Robert Kiyosaki is amazing. And Cash Flow Quadrant talks about the fact that people, they get really good at what they're doing as a job and they see their boss. Oh, look at all the money they're making, but they don't understand all the little intricacies of what the boss is going through. And that was a great question, by the way, what you just asked. Now I get what you're saying. And so the business person now leaves their job. I'll use a mechanic as an example, an auto mechanic. And let's say they charge $100 an hour. So that person's getting paid $25, $30 an hour. And they're going, oh, the boss is billing me out at $100 and making $70. Well, guess what? You got overhead. They got special liability insurance. They got equipment. They got to pay for the power, the lights, right? All the utilities. And when they're left over, most self-employed business owners with a few staff or even a lot of staff make less per hour than their employees do.
Yeah.
Right. So they're in quiet desperation, especially in the first 5 years, because most businesses, if you analyze and do the numbers before they ever, unlock the door and open it and brick and mortar and start up, they do what's called a 5-year cost profit analysis. And that's because if they get bank loans, you for sure have to do it in Canada. I'm not sure about where you guys are from, but they look at the numbers and they have to. So then the next 5 years, you're under stress because you have expectations from the bank because you got a business loan. And then you got expectations that if an employee's sick, guess what? You got to work.
Yeah.
You could be on holidays. Your holidays get cut short because something tragic happens in your business, or bottom line, you had a slow month, but every one of your employees still has to get paid, and you get paid last, right? And that is a real problem, and most of it has to do with the fact that they're not structured. They don't budget properly, because in life, in personal life, if I was coaching you, part of your budget would be an emergency fund, and I'd teach you how to build up that emergency fund. Businesses need to do the same thing. And the pandemic's really shocked people, Trevor, because we were finding out how many businesses didn't have anything. They were living from paycheck to paycheck, just like they were as an employee. But now as an employer, they have to worry about all their employees, and they're still not number one. As an employee, they didn't feel like they were number one. Then they go start up a business and bring on other people that don't feel like they're number one. Nobody's feeling like number one. They're all feeling like they're in quiet desperation because nobody's teaching and coaching them that, life has to be lived on purpose. And sometimes the easiest way is black and white. Yeah. You can use a broad felt tip marker and a piece of paper and teach people how to budget. That's how simple it is. So the listeners, it is not hard. It is so simplistic. I coach people I actually had somebody reach out to me, a couple different people. Somebody I had on my show, I've had reach out to me and ask if I'd coach people on, globally. This was when I first started my podcast in the fall, and I said, absolutely, I would, and I'll do it for free. So anybody, you want to reach out to me, I'll help you through those first 2 stages. We'll do it over Zoom. Obviously, I'm not going to jump on a plane and fly to London, but I'll help anybody out because I really do care about human beings. And I don't want them to live how I lived for so many years in my life, right? And then you put up a facade, you pretend, right? Yeah. And the general consumer or the general friend or family member doesn't realize you're putting up a facade because they got their own facade they're living in. We're all living in quiet desperation, just like back to the business example. The employees and the employer are living in quiet desperation. Look at the massive amount in our city around North America. I'm not sure if this is the same in the UK. The amount of businesses that have closed and boarded up in the last year. Yeah. Never to come back. Family-run businesses completely gone. Yeah. Because they lived from paycheck to paycheck. They pretended to be happy, but then when tragedy occurred, being the pandemic, they found out how unhappy they weren't. Now they're locked into their homes, losing their business, seeing it fall apart, and it's tragic. It's just tragic. Just realize, listeners, people like Trevor and I care, because if Trevor didn't care, I wouldn't be on here right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think money is so pivotal in a lot of ways, kind of directly, but also, as you've kind of touched on and unpacked for us, the emotional, the psychological stress that then affects health and, lots of different areas. A lot of it comes back to the fact that you've not balanced the books well enough, and you're not, you're spending more than what you're earning, and you're not planning well enough. We are kind of coming to near the end of the time, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell us a bit more about your book. Is that really unpacking those first 2 stages, or what's in the book?
Well, the book basically starts in my origin and some of the things I talked about. Okay. It talks about my life. Some of the things I haven't discussed, you'll find in the book, like other health concerns I had growing up as a kid, bullied, feeling ostracized. And I was diagnosed with a rare degenerative spine condition when I was in junior high and middle school. And it talks about why I became who I became and why I slipped into quiet desperation. And it literally talks about the whole process of where I got where I got. And it does talk about the steps and stages. Obviously not in detail. The book would be thousands of pages, right? But it touches on, it whets your appetite enough that I'm hopeful that people that do check it out will actually, reach out. If not to me, reach out to somebody. Being vulnerable is so hard for us today, Trevor, right? Yeah. To put our guard down because we're always afraid that like they talk about North America, keeping up with the Joneses or keeping up with the Smiths, and people buy themselves a facade, yet the financial part of it, they're struggling with, right? Yeah. So my book literally, again, it's Give a Heck, How to Live Life on Purpose and Not by Accident. It literally will, it'll talk about way more in detail, obviously, than what we've talked about. But the end result is it finishes off at the end about the difference. This is what you can do. This is how people can help you. And if anybody reaches out to me, I'll never turn away people. So if you think I'm going to say, oh, hey, you got to give me a bunch of money. No, I just want to help you. End result is if, it gets too detailed, obviously, if it takes away from what pays my family, then I'm going to have to start charging. But there's lots of people I help out for free, no problems, right? But then sometimes people will say, well, we want to go farther than this. Okay, well, now we're going to get into the coaching part of my business, and this is what it's going to be, right? And but again, I'm not out to be a millionaire doing this. I'm out to change lives, right? To uplift and help people feel better about their day.
Yeah, that's a good approach. As you say, you need to pay the bills and everything else, but there's the other side of that is helping other people, isn't it? Just from their struggles, getting them to a place where a better focus on the right things. Maybe just in the last couple of moments, we've touched on a couple of the struggles and kind of the challenges people have. Are there any other kind of mindsets that you've seen with people that they just trip over and over and over, and it stops them getting to the point where they're sorting out their finances? Anything that we haven't covered?
Absolutely. I talk about it in the book too. Number one thing that people keep on tripping over is their associations. Their associations aren't just people. Associations are so much more in depth than people. There's what you watch. There's what you listen to. It's the books you read. When people are sad and depressed, Trevor, what do? They go listen to sad, depressing music. They watch a sad, depressing movie. If they're angry and violent, they watch violent movies, violent TV, read violent, you know what I mean? Or the list goes on. And I'm not saying that there's not a place for any of that. There is. But you need to train your brain to look at it as entertainment and not live within it and it pull you down. So people want to actually climb out. I do. I coach my clients and tell them you need to change your associations. Even if it's the people around you, your 5 closest people in your life are pulling your sail up and down. They're controlling the rudder of your life. They're you're allowing them to be your co-pilot, whether you want them to or not. So if you know that's going to happen, that they're going to influence and you're going to influence them, why not ensure the associations of what you do are good? They're positive. They're always uplifting. If you fall back, you're going to have the ability to go grab a good podcast, a good book, watch a movie that's entertaining to take you out of the place you're at, to do a reset, right? We always need to reset our 6 inches, and people's associations are why they don't, and they get stuck in that rut. I'll coach them and they fall back because they don't change their associations, even after I've talked to them about it. And I know it's tough. I'm not saying anything I do or you're going to go through is going to be easy. But really, in life, the rewarding things in life aren't easy.
Yeah.
They take some sacrifice. They take some adjustment. They take some growing pains and some discomfort. Yeah. Just find somebody that's going to help you, lift you up, pick you up, and that you can call an association like me and say, hey, this is blah. This is what I went through this week. And then we unpack it, like you were saying, the word, I love the word. I help them unpack it. Yeah. And I honestly believe there's nothing that you're going through that I can't help you figure out the opposite side of it, the good part of it, and unpack the crap that you went through and see the light through it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's key. We oftentimes, the associations close to us, we find very difficult to get rid of them, or not. Maybe that's the wrong term, but to distance ourselves from negative influences, if they're negative, because of the relation and because, we've been friends for years or X, Y, Z, whatever the outcome is. But we have to be tenacious. We have to be specific about the right influences around us, because life is short, isn't it? Like you say, if you don't sort your finances out, sort your focus, your mindset out, it's tough anyway. So either way, we have to grow or we have to experience tough, challenging situations. So we might as well be purposeful about it, get help from Dwight and other people as well, to really focus on the things that are going to help us grow and take us to where we want to go. Like you said, living life on purpose. It's like, are we purposeful about what we're doing with our time, with our finances, with the friends, the people around us? I think that it's everything you shared is really key and very practical for people that wherever they are, either financially or they know other people that may be struggling financially, or like you say, different focus of their minds, they're thinking on the wrong things. There's so much that you shared that can really help people. So thank you for your time. I can tell just by chatting with you that your heart is in the right place. You're a very authentic person. You genuinely want to help people. And the offer is there for everybody listening. Get in touch with Dwight, by all means. Pick up a copy of his book, because that can help first off. But also get in touch with Dwight. Let him help you. Let him shine the light on areas that maybe you don't really want to look at. But they're the areas that you are going to struggle with until you sort them out. And he's certainly there to help people sort them out and get through it. He's living proof that, if you stay in struggle, it affects your health long term. If you sort it out, you can then get to a point where you're happy, you're healthier, and you can help other people as well. I think that's the general focus of how we should be living, isn't it? If we're in business and it's just for ourselves, I think we've lost the plot somewhere. I think it has to go further than just looking out for ourselves. So thank you for what you've shared, Dwight. It's been a really enjoyable conversation as well as informative. So I appreciate your time and sharing with the audience and myself. Definitely I will listen to this again and pick up some more notes and nuggets to help me on my journey as well. And for everybody listening, yes, there's the spreadsheet that Dwight offers as well. If you want tactical help like that, something that's tangible that helps you set your goals and your budgets to start with, have a conversation with him. You'll know between the two of you how you can help each other. He's certainly there and open for that. So, without further ado, I will lastly say thank you, Dwight, again for your time. And for everybody listening, take something and be proactive with it. Life is short. So we'll leave it there and we'll catch you on the next episode. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Yeukai Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.yeukai.businessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.